Let's see. Who's next? Line. Line greets you with a nod. Here for a chat? I've been waiting for you to come and see what strange beast you've taken into your party. I'd like to know more about you. Let me guess. Your first question is, can you wear a hat with your one arm horn? And am I right? So, can you wear a hat with your one horn? Sure I can, but certain designs don't suit me too well. Lance speaks in a deadly serious voice. You speak common much better than the rest of your tribe. Funnily enough, common is not that common underground, Lance says, but your observation is correct. I used to live on the surface with my parents for a while and had a chance to learn a couple things. The language and the fact that every present you see the fact that every present who sees my scaly mug screams demon and runs away. I don't know if you're interested, but my mom wasn't from an underground tribe. She was a smuggler, the kind that used the dungeons of Canabras to secretly move and store goods. One time, two gangs couldn't agree on how to share a prime cut, got into a fight, and the winners threw the losers down the hole, dead and living alike. My dad went to check if the corpses had anything useful on them, and found a girl from the surface, barely clinging to life. An incredible feeling sparked between them. Or maybe the girl just liked men with scales and a cat nose. That might be it. One way or another, he got her back on her feet, and he later even left his home caves. She left her smuggling behind, and they began an honest life together. That's the delightful story of how old land came into the world. The next chapter, however, my family and I never stayed in one place for long. We lived sometimes on the surface, sometimes underground. We couldn't find a place to call home. Living in the caves was hard on my mom, and my dad's appearance raised too many questions in Mandev. They were at war against the demons after all. In the end, my parents decided to stop making each other miserable and separated. My father and I returned to our tribe. I think the presence screaming, demon! Demon had something to do with it. Or maybe dad just couldn't stand life without rat tail soup. I couldn't rule out the possibility. Did you come with me so you can see the surface again? No, that wasn't it. I just don't have much patience for certain types of creatures. Demons, I mean. If they want to destroy Canabras, I'll be on the side of the people they're attacking. Land looks away. Land, you're my companions, and companions should trust each other. I'm counting on you to give me honest answers, not excuses. Land looks ashamed. I guess you're right. I shouldn't have been so evasive. It's just that some things are hard to talk about. My family, for example. My birth, hell, take me, turned out to be a great misfortune for my parents, all because I'm relatively healthy. I'm the best thing that can come from a marriage between a cave-dwelling mongrel and anyone from the surface. A healthy child with the right number of hands and feet, no apparent defects, no missing organs or other problems. They saw hope in me, so risk having more children. They thought it would somehow be alright. A growl edges in Land's voice. I could have had 4 brothers. The first was born 2 years after me and died 3 years later. He didn't have a nose, nothing even remotely resembling one. He could only breathe through his mouth. Mom and Dad were afraid to take their eyes off him for fear he choked and suffocated on something. But at the end, it was his weak heart that killed him. Then there was another pregnancy and birth. I pretended I was sleeping, but snuck out of my bedroom and listened under the door all the hours. It was very strange. But I never heard the newborn screaming. Mom moaning, yes. The priest praying. Then I dared to open the door a little and looked inside. The priest stood there very pale. One of them was holding something, a small object that fit in his palm. He asked, "Do you know what this is?" And the other said, "I think it's a head." Lance stopped. "Enough. You don't have to keep going if it hurts you." "Hell no." I started to tell you and I make it to the end. You want to know why I follow you to the surface? Well, here's the reason. Lan pauses, exhales, and continues in a steadier voice. It turned out that this time Mom was expecting triplets. The first of the babies was born in pieces, and the two others didn't live long enough to draw their first breath. After 3 weeks later, my father took me to the caves. He didn't want to leave, I could see it in his face. But I think my mom and he decided it together. The curse my people have carried in the First Crusade stood between them, not to mention the 4 dead babies. And old age was rapidly taking its toll on my father. After we returned to the cave, he only lived another 4 years. So, if you're asking me why I decided to go up with you to the surface and join the Crusaders, well, the answer is I've always wanted to. I was afraid to leave my tribe, and it always haunted me that I die in a world where 4 crusades could do nothing to stop the beast from the abyss, and the number of victims kept growing, and I want to change that, or at least try to. And if changing things is too much for me to ask, then at least get a little revenge. The ones who were left behind the world won't owe me a great debt. The lives of 4 brothers, all my mother's tears, my father's broken heart. It's a lot. It's so much that killing a couple of demons won't do it for me. I want to do something real, and I'm ready to pay any price. Call it my personal crusade if you like. Land gives you a slandergram. I used to think that the world would be better if I've never been born, but now I think I was born for this, to settle the score. Would you like to find your mother? No. The word flies from Land's mouth faster than an arrow. Then after a pause, he continues. I don't want to meet her, not because I feel any resentment. It's just that she's a health elf. She barely got her first gray hair, and I'll be a ramshackled old man. She's buried enough children. There's no need to make her witness the death of another one. I hope you understand. I am very sorry, truly. Lan smiles, this time sadly. Well then, I'm very lucky. I met someone who not only helped me choose the right path, but is happy to listen to my whining. Why didn't you go up and join the Crusaders before? I couldn't just abandon my tribe. I'm their best hunter. They'll have it much harder without me. But now that the demons have nearly destroyed Canabras and the caves almost collapsed on our heads, sitting and waiting it out just wasn't an option anymore. Anyway, I'm more useful up here than I am down there. Plus the chief let me go, which means my debt to the tribe has been paid. Thank you for sharing, Lan. Thanks for listening. Mongrels have short lifespans, but you don't look like you're getting older or dying. How old are you? Lan chuckles. I'm as old as I look. No surprises there, but remember Soul? He's 10 years older than me. I remember him back when he was a fearless warrior, and day by day I watched him turn into an old man, him and my father. Wow. It happens very quickly. First you miss a shot because you don't see the target as clearly as you used to. You think it's because your eyes are tired. You tell yourself, it'll get better tomorrow. Then you notice you're having trouble breathing. That climbing is harder than before. Lan clenches and unclenches his human fist. Your fingers stop bending. You have to tie your sword through your hand. You can't even put on the greaves without help. When you're washing your face in the stream, sometimes you'll get your sight of a gray-haired, wrinkled old man you don't recognize. And this goes on until one day you come across a cave beast and you realize you can't outrun it. Lan takes a breath. My dad kept diaries, marking all the signs, and I saw it too the last year. I had to help him get out of bed, help him dress, remind him to eat. Sometimes he forgot my name. I told him that we should have stayed on the surface, and he joked that dodging a goddess was behavior unworthy of a crusader. He meant Pharasma. Every morning, I wake up and check how I feel, but there's no signs yet. Even so, I know I don't have much time. I need to do something useful before I forget why I came here. I want to talk about Windwalk. Are you sure? Lan sighs. Alright. Were you just friends or were you more than that? Wow, you really don't pull any punches, do you? Lan exhales loudly. There was a time when I asked myself the same question. Windowalk knew me better than anyone. She understood me better than anyone. She was my first woman, but we never loved each other. Maybe I could have grown to love her, but it always seemed like she never understood what love was. Maybe she just wasn't capable of those kinds of feelings. I guess there's nothing else to say about that. No arguments from me. Tell me about your connection to Windowalk. My connection to Windowalk? I mean, where do I start? Lan turns his unexpressive reptile half of his face to you. We grew up together, trained together. She was the chief starter. She was groomed to be the best all her life. And then I came along. We were rivals, but we dragged each other out of the tight spots too. I've always been drawn to grand heroic gestures, sometimes idiotic ones, whereas Windu liked to roam unexplored passages, finding new caves and making maps. She wanted to be a great huntress, the one who make it through the shield maze, but instead she... Lan shakes his head. It'll be better if she died. The death of a friend is painful, but watching a friend become a shadow of their former self is unbearable. She doesn't think she's a shadow of her former self. Of course, she thinks she did everything right, because the second she starts to doubt herself, she'll have to face the truth, to admit that she's just a cannibal, and she's just a cannibal that demons use as their wish. Lan frowns, looks almost like a wince. She wants to get stronger and stronger, but for what? I've never understood what drives her. Thanks, I found out everything I wanted to know. If you ever want to reopen any more of my old wounds, you know where to find me. I found out everything I wanted to know. Thank you. Sure thing. That was one question. Oh, Allah. Let's see. Tell me about your people. Of course. What would you like to know? What's it like living in your caves? Oh. Lan gives a broad smile. His smile is strange as it falters where his human features meet his animal ones. Imagine that in the entire world there's only a few hundred like you. There's not an inch of fertile ground anywhere, nowhere to grow grains for bread or cotton and linen for cloth. Your neighbors are beasts who want to eat you, or parasites who want to infect you with their larvae and then eat you. And it's not that bad because you can try to eat most of the things that are trying to eat you, sometimes at the risk of getting poisoned, sometimes with almost no risk at all. In the worst years, there's not a single living thing anywhere to be found, predator or prey. That's when you eat mushroom soup. I'll say 3 times a day, but there was barely enough for once every 3 days. Lan shrugged. But life underground has its upsides. Pun intended. There's no risk of losing the roof over your head. There's no bad weather, not count the earthquakes, of course. Do you have a way to tell day and night? You can't see the sun in your caves. Every mongrel settlement has a big gong, which we treat like a relic. The gong keeper hits it twice a day to mark the beginning and end. But these customs doesn't keep time very precisely. Every mongrel child has snuck up to the gong to strike it at the wrong time at least once. And just out of pure mischief. Nothing could keep me away from it. Not even the fact that I have only one ear, which means it would take double the punishment. Once I was caught. So sometimes the wrong strikes get mixed in with the right ones, and the tribe can find itself jumping up to greet the early morning in the middle of the night. Are you really the descendants of the first crusaders? More like demon spawn, aren't we? Sad but true. Without the demons, there would be no mongrels. It's the magic of the world wound that affected our ancestors and made their children the way we are. Like most in our tribe, Chief Saul fancies himself a descendant of the underground crusaders, the ones our heroic ancestors left to guard the caves. I don't know if it's true or not. The angel came to our caves for a reason. Maybe he remembered us. Those were evil and dangerous times after the First Crusade. Hundreds of crusaders began having children, and the babies were born with fangs and horns and warts that covered half their face. People didn't like the new look. The Inquisitors sure didn't, so our ancestors fled persecution and made a home for themselves down here under the ground. They probably intended to find a cure for their children and hoped to return in time, but it never happened. Instead, the world wound's terrible legacy was passed down from generation to generation. Mongrel parents can only guess what their Mongrel parents can only guess what their child will look like. Each of us is born with new mutations. Many mutations are fatal. Land stops, then goes on quietly. Down in the caves, we usually don't congratulate the families for the birth of a child until they turn at least 3. Most don't even get a name before that. There's no point. It hasn't been that long since the First Crusade. Why do you know so little about your ancestors? Our lives are much shorter than most uplanders. Up here, only a few generations pass, and many still live who remember old Socorus, as it stood untouched by the demon. Queen Galfrey, for example. But when we live, mongrels start getting old much earlier than humans, much faster, and with more devastating consequences. Few live past 40, and fewer still live long enough to die of old age. Hunger, disease, and monsters from the deep are more effective killers than time. So for us, the city of the First Crusade is a legend that happened generations ago. There are no living witnesses. We have a tale of the wise and great ancestors who left us to stand guard in the catacombs. But in reality, I suspect they were desperate wretches who couldn't figure out how to dispel the demonic plague and who were abandoned by their own kind. Do mongrel tribes fight each other? There were certain skirmishes, and I've been forced to kill my kinfolk before too. Land speaks in a steady voice. Fights more often break out over food, but we have laws in caves, written and unwritten rules that we follow. We respect one another's rights to live, but hunger, it can push a person over the edge. I've never, you can count on that, stolen someone else's kill, but I can understand those of my kin who tried. To hear your kids begging for food and not being able to feed them is terrifying. He frowns and goes silent. You're the only member of the Nithome tribe to call yourself mongrels. Why is that? Because all of Galorian calls us that? I don't even see the point of all of this hemming and hawing over what we're called. Anyone who finds it offensive or takes issue with it can lead the charge against the name. No one's stopping them. But personally, I'm not going to pick a fight over something that's unimportant as a name. Thank you, I find out everything I wanted to know. What do you think of life on the surface? It must be very different from life underground. Of course, as far as living conditions, the surface is definitely a better place to be. It's easier to get good food and water, not to mention build a house, and even grow a few things. In older, well-established settlements, you don't have to deal with anything scarier than rats, or maybe foxes than chickens. As for the kind of lives you have, I heard a story about the demon worshippers abducting the whole family and sacrificing them one by one while the others watch. But there were some brave crusader knights nearby, and they killed the villains and saved everyone. And I heard another story. A young blacksmith lost his arm in a fire, couldn't work to feed his wife and baby. They tried their best and lived from hand to hand, but they were still destitute. In the end, the desperate blacksmith robbed a traveler one night on the road. But there were some brave crusader knights nearby, and they caught the robber and threw him in prison. Not long after, his wife smothered their baby and hanged herself. Up here, the same person can proudly say he's protecting the innocent from demons and then look the other way, while the same innocent starves just because they were born into a poor family. Queen Galfrey prolongs her life with a sun orchard elixir that cost enough to feed an entire city. Back in our caves, everyone is equally poor, and if one person starves, the whole tribe starves. We didn't abandon our own in times of trouble. That's the power of a tribe. The laws of the surface are made so that some get everything and others get nothing. I might just be a naive fool from the caves, but I don't understand how it's possible to have so much more and share so much less. Anyway, look who I'm talking to. You must know life on the surface much better than I. Hmm. also have a few questions for our Freckles. I'm stuck between good and chaotic. I've never leave a needy person in trouble. I've been giving more than most, which means I'm not able to help others. A fitting reply. Don't take my words as a reproach. I like grumblings as much as crackling jokes. Landis obviously trying to muster a friendly smile, but it's an expression his face doesn't accommodate very naturally. You said you were prepared to risk your life to do something meaningful. What exactly did you mean? To invent a new salad and have it named after me? Land remarks grimly, then he sighs. Truth be told, I don't know. It would have been much easier if I was really wanting to kill demons, then a few more demons. It would have been much easier if all I really wanted was to kill demons, then a few more demons, then more demons after that. Good honest rage and no needless brooding. I think I'm actually envying the warriors who can live like that. But I can't. If life taught me anything, it's just that there's no easy choices. Dying a glorious death isn't enough. Some heroes of the Crusades did that, and also saved entire settlements, erected the war stones. Their actions kept the lands of Mendez safe for decades. That's what I want, for my dumb, short life to have meant something. Heroes of the Crusade, the Mendevian Crusade. In 4433, Aradin defeated a cult dedicated to the demon lord Discaria, making the north of Avestan safe from demonic influence. However, this protection ended with Aradin's death in 4606. The same year, the world wound was opened by the witch Arulu Vorlesh, working in the conjunction with her demonic patron Discari. Demons poured out and overran the barbarian nation of Socorus. The world wound was not large at first, but soon it abruptly expanded. As it kept growing, it came to be seen as a threat to the entire world. The remaining clerics of Aradin and the clerics of his followers, Iomade, took it upon themselves. The remaining clerics of Aradin and the clerics of his follower Iomade took it upon themselves to defeat the demons and seal the world wound. Answering their call, thousands of pilgrims crusaders flooded up the river road and into Mendev, the nearest neighboring kingdom of former Socorus. Thus the Mendevian Crusades were born. So Iomade was his follower? Was Aradin's follower? You think I've had an exaggerated opinion of myself? Some scaly freak crawls out of the caves and wants to take control of the Wardstone and flaunt Iomade's banner. Any fool can charge at the front lines of the demonic armies and die there. But what good would that do? I want something meaningful, you know? Even if I have to pay the highest price, especially if I have to pay for it. There are plenty of worthier people who need to survive this war, and tell everyone else what nutcases we were. Thank you for your answers. So long. We have talked to him, so now we can this will probably the last level where we'll follow, and we'll probably start branching off after level 3. But at level 3 he gets the feat they chose was deflect arrows. You must have at least one free hand holding nothing to use this feat. Once per round, when you would normally be hit with an attack from a ranged weapon, you may deflect it so that you can take no damage from it. You must be aware of the attack and not flat-footed. An attack attempting to deflect a ranged attack doesn't count as an action. He gets his key pool equal to 1/2 his monk level plus his wisdom modifier. As long as he has at least 1 point in his key pool, he can make a key strike. I'm guessing as the key pool is replenished every morning after 8 hours of rest or meditation. These hours do not need to be consecutive. Okay, so you just have to rest. Abilities, key power, extra attack, and what is abundant key? Oh, that's mythic, right? Fast movement gains a +10 enchantment bonus to his base speed. He can't wear armor. Or have a medium or a heavy load, so we have to pay attention to how much he has on him. Key strike magic, point blank mastery, longbow. You do not provoke attack of opportunities when firing the selected weapon while threatened. Good to know, good to have. Zen archery. Zen archer may use his wisdom instead of his dex on ranged attack rolls when using a bow. And they upped his athletics, mobility, perception. That's fine. Pink eye. Just listen to this woman. Isn't it amazing how much nonsense can fit into such a small package? And what is her name? Oh, it's hard to see. Endora. An opposing young Oriad is surrounded by a crowd of crusaders who are hanging on her every word. I hope this example clearly illustrates the difference between Jiska legionnaires from the last war and the Crusaders, the perfection of farming spirit they were imbued with during creation, turning them into parts of well-balanced war machines, not a ragtag bunch of individuals with a united whole. Jiska. The Jiska Imperium was the first human kingdom to establish itself in the inner sea region after the centuries of darkness and devastation caused by Earthfall. Its citizens spoke a nearly forgotten language called Jiska, whose alphabet became the basis of the alphabets of the modern languages called Varisian and Taldane. At its height, it dominated all of the northwestern Garoon and also part of southwestern Afghanistan. Raised of desert nomads and attacked by powerful outsiders from negative 3300 onward, and the lack of a minus 3300 onward, and the lack of a strong eastern trade route led to the slow decline of Jiska. Asaurian, then a burgeoning kingdom under the control of the powerful pharaoh of the Forgotten Plagues, pushed westward. It overthrew the already weakened Jiska, and the Imperium was plunged into a numerous secession around minus 2764, from which it was never again able to recover its former political, military, and economic power. Because of this military and economic defeat, the important culture, magical, and technological advances of the Jiska Imperium were largely lost and forgotten. Now tell me again, why am I supposed to be impressed by your reckless assault where everyone is fighting for their ego and for the right to beat their peers to a swift but pointless heroic sacrifice? Some of the Crusaders grumble unhappily, but it is clear that they are captivated by the woman's words. The only exception is a scraggly and disheveled halfling monk, whose fluffy black eye gives him away as a brawler and a troublemaker. He enthusiastically pushes forward and tries to engage, but one of his friends swiftly jabs him in the back with an elbow, making the poor fellow pause to catch his breath. Quietly listen to the discussion. One of the Crusaders angrily curls his fist tightly and refuses with a burst of passion. If those gist of yours, or whatever, have come for us, we'll have their guts for garters. You think we've never fought a mighty adversary before? The soldier stormed aside cannot fully conceal his relish. He clearly plans to enjoy this confrontation. The Crusaders around him look upon their exotic opponent with a mixture of irritation and piqued interest. The woman chuckles before cutting off her interlocutor. I would love to see you storm a 60-foot tall walking castle, shaped like a giant elephant that carries siege fortification on its back. And I have you know these fortifications were defended by Jiskin priest craftsmen armed with demon-bound war machines. They use the enemies you cannot defeat as mindless weapons. The woman gives the people around her a triumphant look and adjusts her clothes with pointed nonchalance. Her voice takes an lecturous tone. You should not argue with someone who happens to be the most authoritative researcher on the history of warfare 3,000 of 3,000 the history of warfare 3,000 years before the foundation of Absalom. Absalom. For more than 4,000 years, Absalom has been the city of the center of the world, a metropolis-sized showcase of the greatest treasure of all Golorian. The city not only holds a key strategic position for both commercial and military endeavors in the region, but encompasses a site of the ascension of four deities and claims to have been founded by none other than the last Aslanti, the god Aradin. The woman looks at you and flashes a amused smile. The lecture is over. Do my esteemed listeners have any questions? Who are you? I am Indara, a warrior, magus, and scholar of classical warfare from Garund. The woman peers at you apprehensively, then sighs. I admit that I am mildly offended by the fact that my name is entirely unfamiliar to you, but I am willing to accept that this is due to Aveston's isolation from the sophisticated culture of the world at large. Garund. Garund is the continent found south of Aveston, across the inner sea and west of Gasmaran, from which it is separated from the Obery Ocean. During the late Age of Anguish and the Age of Destiny, Central Garund was the heart of civilization in the hemisphere, and this legacy of arcane discovery remains even today in the nations of Osorian, Nex, Nentambu, and Halamog. Beyond these bastions of civilization, Garund is overrun by dangerous wilds, from expansive deserts to impenetrable jungles. Avestan is a continent of the world of Golorian, one of the most densely populated areas on the planet. Avestan possesses as many varied cultures and environments as any other continent in the world, and any ancient history stretching back tens of thousands of years. Brevard, the River Kingdoms, Numeria, and the Stolen Lands are all situated on Avestan. What is this last war that you mentioned? The last war of Jiska, of course, a long-scale conflict that took place 3,000 years before the foundation of Absalom. It was a war against the Osirian Pharaoh of Forgotten Plagues, the war that ended the legendary Jiska Imperium, an epic struggle that became the most vibrant age in military history. Alas, all conflicts that followed it were but a pale shadow, including the one I am witnessing here. You come a long way to be here. I like to think of myself as an inhabitant of Golorian, and I don't narrowly identify with any country in particular. Why did you come here? To witness a legendary war, the confrontation between denizens of a plane famous for its love of violence and the crusaders from every continent, united by a common goal of defending their home. An epic struggle of colossal proportion that hasn't been particularly epic so far, truth be told. The monk with the black eye grins and mutters under his breath, maybe she just can't see it from here. The view will get way more epic if she stopped hiding amongst us and take a walk outside. The woman smirks contemptuously. She does not deem the monks worthy of comments. It looks like you know more about warfare than any of us. Oh, am I hearing things, or did someone finally acknowledge my competence in the art of warfare? Perhaps there is a significantly open-minded person among the Crusaders after all. I find myself pleasantly surprised. Why do you find the last war of Jiska so inspiring? Imagine legions of golems imbued with extraplanar spirits marching into battle. Imagine flying cities that swoops out of the clouds like terrifying monstrous birds of prey to drop forces on top of enemy castles. Picture gigantic mechanisms powered by captive and very angry demons and devils. Imagine standing in the warpath of walking citadels or having to cover your ears to block out the sound of cannons loaded with shrieking elementals. Finally, imagine the ultimate weapon that defeated the Jiska, the daily night plague. This affliction was an attack dog, a trained academic, to tame pestilence, striking only those who its master wanted to kill. Imagine all these terrors and understand that no flight or fancy can even come close to the horror of the nightmares that they made real. Why don't you join the Crusaders and show them how fighting should be done? No, I am a historian, an analyst, a theorist. Do you know what these three words have in common? They describe a mortal woman who does not participate in the conflict upon which her thesis will be founded. But then again, I will hardly be able to describe this mess as anything other than a feeble likeness of the last war of Jiska. The monk with the damaged eye grins slyly and comments, "The more dangerous the upcoming scuffle is, the more motivated we will find ever clever and pretty words to justify not actually going to battle." How do you know so much about Jiska's last war? I cannot say without false modesty that there is no more authoritative research on Golorian when it comes to the history of warfare 3,000 years before the foundation of Absalom. I've dedicated my whole life to this subject. I've personally visited old battlefields and studied the most mysterious and forbidden archives containing chronicles of ancient wars, sometimes risking my life in the process. I saw falling Sky City of the Shori Empire with my own eyes. I ripped out the control crystal from an exterminator class combat golem that guarded a Jiska laboratory with my own hands. These fingers held the glass flasks that the servants of the Pharaoh Forgotten Plagues used to create the first generation of pestilence that devastated the Jiska Emporium. How do I know so much? I saw and touched everything I am telling you about. You're wrong to treat the Crusaders with such disdain. Allow me to explain. A debate? Ooh, I would be happy to prove that the current conflict can hold a counter to the last war of Jiska. Very well. The last war of Jiska was waged using the significantly greater numbers of troops. Both sides actively relied on reinforcements from allied planes, and the strategic planning was perfected through no fewer than 7 rounds of intensive design. None of the above applies to this war of yours. Compared to the Jiska, we are but stone club-wielding kobolds. I would like to conclude my thesis with a few words of wise counsel from Dagon, the advisor to the Pharaoh of Forgotten Plains. I doubt you will comprehend the true genius of his statement, but here it is nonetheless. A godfly sees the ox. The ox pays no heed to the godfly, but chrism fever takes them both. Diplomacy or world? +7. The principles of world are always the same. Weapon costs and resources may change, but the foundations remain immutable. Oh, crap. One off. Then why don't we study tactics by watching a couple of rock-wielding goblins fight over a dead rat? Endurous sarcastic words produce bursts of laughter from the audience. Come on. Come on. Said she's standing in the middle of a dingy tavern. Adora graciously accepts the chuckles of her audience. One mustn't overestimate the importance of current events for world history. Should Canabris fall, it will become yet another page in the chronicles of the world-long conflict. Should it endure, it will be fortunate to earn any mention at all. Or wrote a 1. I think he has something to add. The halfling perks up, takes a deep breath, and bellows dramatically. Oh, enough. I was patient with you, the so-called expert, but I've got something to say. Firstly, screw you for disrespecting us and that we are doing and what we are doing because of some dusty old books. Secondly, I heard tales about the epic worlds of old and next TNZ and elsewhere, and every time they claim it was a slaughter, no further war could hold a candle to. So say the old folks while honest soldiers like us get ready for the next battle because we need to go out there and fight. So later we too can say our war was the most legendary of all to young whippersnappers who won't be nearly as good as we were. Thirdly, you claim to know war, but do you really? You can work your tongue, but can you actually fight? Or are we listening to an empty chatterbox that reads a few books but hasn't been in a brawl? You can enter a barbershop and run into a dozen such experts. Show us what your work so we can be sure there is something to respect. The halfling starts feistly rolling up his sleeves. Endora is taken aback and looks at the monk with obviously displeasure. I am not going to compete with you in brutishness. Look for another pugilist if you wish to have the symmetry of your face restored. The royal woman raises her chin and coldly gazes at the crowd of the crusaders cheering and whooping for the monk. It looks like holding a solid scholarly debate in a godforsaken tavern was a mistake. I am sure you would have been able to expound on your arguments in a longer discussion. Endora nods with obvious relief. I am glad we both understand this limitation. It is always a pleasure to face a worthy opponent, even if the debate takes place in a grimy tavern, perhaps especially because of that. Endora unbuckles her sword belt and hands you the weapon. This is a worldly weapon. It will be of use not only for the strong but also for the wise. And this is where I bid you farewell. Before the end of the day, I was planning to observe how winged demons use spectacles to drive their prey like herds of livestock. It's about time I go back to my research. The hint of a smile graces Endora's lips when she sees the disappointment in the eyes of many crusaders around her. Stay safe. Pink eye. The monk nudges you with an elbow, his friendly jab, perhaps harder than intended due to his enthusiasm. Yet another egghead, full of theory but not sense. To understand war, you need to live it, take part in it, not gawk at it from the library. The monk takes off a pair of gauntlets and hands them to you. If you ever see this chatterbox slug monk at Crusaders again, use them to smack her across the face and tell her I said hi. So what all did we get? We got this gauntlet graph this wearer a +1 enchantment bonus on attacks and damage rolls with unarmed attacks and natural weapons. I don't know if this +8 for the 11. No, I don't think so. I'm not sure. I don't think that works. What I do want to do is switch that and then Claw of Jessica. A flaming sword forged by the craftsman of Jeroen. The scabbard is decorated with engravings that depicts battle between Obsidian and the Jessica Emporium, accompanied by Endora's music embroidered in golden thread. This is a +1 flaming short sword, sheathed in fire that deals an extra 1d6 fire damage. Are you medium? Or you're light? And we forgot to level up Camellia. She gets level 2 spells and dodge. And the feat they chose for her was dodge. Yeah, we're gonna be running off probably after this after this. Yeah, because I want to pick down the next hex. It gave her mobility and trickery. For her. She never really heals anyone, honestly. So what's the DC? 15. Who's next? Killer, Sela, and Arabeth. Sela first. Sela smiles at you warmly. Hey there. Through the march through the dungeon, we never got the chance to exchange a proper greeting. It's high time that I shake your hand. I'd like to know more about you. Of course, ask anything. I'll answer honestly. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from? I'm a little bit from Geb, a little bit from Ketapesh, but mostly from the Knights of Iomade. I was accepted and began my training at 14. I belong to their ranks more than I belong to any other place. You've come to Mendel by a long road, haven't you? A very long one. Tia looks at you cheerfully. A traveler is expected to have amusing stories. Unfortunately, I only have 3 tales of any interest I like to say, and I like to save them for our next feast. Otherwise, I won't have anything to show for myself when it's time to start bragging. And that just won't do, especially since I won the night with my cautionary tale of the Battle of Canabras. Well, the feast there'll be. We'll talk when we celebrate our next victory. I like your attitude. We never overcome grief and misery without hope for the better and dreams of brighter days. What made you become a paladin of Iomade? Sita gazes sharply and momentarily, then she sighs. That's a serious question and a good one. You should ask it of your companions, but it's a long story. To start with, 12 years ago, I was nothing like the person I am now. I roamed the streets of Soku and with the other homeless orphans. I stole, I fought, I was a hired sword for a bit. Not the proper origin for a paladin, is it? Back then, Wasoku was the city of orphans, widows, and widowers. Nodes decimated the city regularly. My parents were among their victims. People have heard about new deaths before they finish mourning their previous ones. One day, a group of knights of Iomade brought a glimmer of hope to the city, but while others saw them as saviors and protectors, I was busy pricing up their noble horses and their gleaming mithril armor, wondering just how much one of their pretty swords would fetch. A thief lives one day at a time, that's what they say. I was the type that never thought past the next job. Anyhow, I was able to sneak into the knight's camp and steal one of their mithril helms. Sela pauses, her voice sad and measured. And I was right there when a gnoll attacked the helm's owner. Asami was her name. And dealt a blow to her unprotected head. A gnoll like all the others, she's fearlessly driven from the gates of Soku. That one blow was fatal, but who was really to blame for her death? The gnoll attacker or the young thief named Sela? Life is cruel and full of chaos. Sometimes survival just comes down to luck. So that's how you see it. Cedar looks at you with curiosity but no hostility. I can't accept that point of view. If the stories of my youth taught me anything, it's that we're all accountable for our actions. It's too easy to wave off responsibility if you use the cruelty of life as an excuse. But you were asking what brought me to the ranks of Iomede's warriors. We all chose to pattern this path for our own reasons. Some are guided by nobility of spirit, some by a desire to fight injustice. I became who I am through penance and the death unpaid. The day after me died, protecting my city, I wanted to kill myself for the terrible guilt I felt. But then I realized it wouldn't make the world any better, and I decided that instead I'll try to take her place. I become who she had been, and protect the innocent who would no longer be able to protect, who she would no longer be able to protect. What are the principles of paladins of Iomade follow? Cedar smiles. I tell you, I like to recite our code. It feels like I've said it 1,000 times, but it never gets old. There is a strength in these words. After a pause, she begins, her voice slow and meditative. I will learn the weight of my sword. Without my heart to guide it, it is worthless. My strength is not in my sword, but in my heart. If I lose my sword, I have lost the tool. If I betray my heart, I have died. I will have faith in the inheritor. I will channel her strength through my body. I will shine in her legion, and I will not tarnish her glory through base actions. I am the first into battle and the last to leave it. I will not be taken prisoner by my free will. I will not surrender those under my command. I will not abandon a companion, so I will honor sacrifices freely given. I will guard the honor of my fellows, both thought and deed, and I will have faith in them. When in doubt, I may force my enemies to surrender, but I am responsible for their lives. I will never refuse a challenge from an equal. I will give honor to worthy enemies and contempt to the rest. I will suffer death before dishonor. I will be temperate in my actions and moderate in my behavior. I will strive to emulate Iomede's perfections. Thank you, I have learned everything I wanted to know. I hope I didn't bore you. Ask me anything else if you like. Everybody said your friend Gianna Aldori was missing. Do you know where we should look for her? Everybody is worried about her fighters. I understand that. I want to look for Gianna myself so I didn't distract you, but since you're in this too, I could use some help. Gianna and I met in Canabras a few days ago and just hit it off. We went drinking together. We went through that unforgettable celebration together too, but we got separated in the crowd. So we should start looking from the main square. That's where I last saw her. Sela frowns. A few days ago. Jan is a good fighter, even if she is green. She couldn't have become an Aldori otherwise. I hope that means she's alright. Is fighting demons all you want, or are you looking for something more? How about cover myself in glory and becoming the hero of 1,000 ballads, or at least a dozen if they're lively ones. See the eyes shine cheerfully. Anyway, to be more serious, the area around the World Wound is the best place for a paladin who wishes to defeat the weak and serve good. Being part of the crusade is reward enough for me. There's something that worries me. I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing my brothers in arms, but the Eagle Watch and the other orders are focused on one aim, the war against the World Wound. That's why they can sometimes overlook the smaller things, ordinary misfortunes, you know. I always like being a wandering knight because any moment I could get up and go help a poor ratful whose family has been kidnapped, or an old woman whose favorite dog has gone missing. So there's my answer. I don't have some big important goal, but I'll be happy to help those in need who need it, a little bit here and there. What do you think of what's going on in Canabras? It's complete chaos. It's lucky we're here to handle it, right? Sela smiles brightly, then she gives you a worried look. Does the way I talk bother you? I know I can seem blasé. Many good people in our protected Tarantula have died here in Canabras. A paladin of Iomade is expected to be properly respectful and solemn. But I prefer to face my troubles with a smile and a bit of common sense. Grief is a weapon they'll use against you. It can undermine a warrior's spirit. It's better we hold off on grief until we've driven the last demon and called it from the city. If we want to win, we can't be. I don't think I would actually say that. There's demons in traditions. There's wisdom in the traditions of mourning, and one shouldn't reject them. All the more so if inappropriate merriment could offend the other mourners. Many people love one's perishing canabras. See the size. You may be right. I should keep myself in check more. Better discipline, more self-control, quality suited to a paladin. Thank you for speaking with me. Until next time. See ya. We can now level her. What did they give her? Paladin for the feet, heavy armor focus, AC +1 in heavy armor. She gets Aura of Courage, immune to fear. Each ally within 10 feet gains a +4 morale bonus on 7 throws against fear effects. Mercy Sickened. Use a lay on hands to heal damage to one target. The target is no longer sickened. Divine Health. Immune to all diseases, including supernatural and magical diseases, including mummy rot. What is this? They gave her mobility, which makes sense, knowledge, and persuasion. Okay, guys. We have the healer and Arabeth left. This is more reading than I expected or remembered, but this will be the end of this episode. Thank you if you lasted this long. Next time we will finish with the next 2 people and then we will head out. So I am Silver Right, and see you next time.